Hi friends, so we had to evacuate our house yesterday with our cats, the house that we've built, that we love, and we had to take our cats to a vet boarding shelter in town, and then we came back and we had to take whatever we could put in our cars, which wasn't that much really. So that's an interesting thing when you have to evacuate, because there's the possibility of your house going up in flames because of embers traveling across the river from these large fires. And that it was so windy yesterday. It was incredibly windy, and it was 36 degrees Celsius. So it was all the special combination that you don't want in an incredibly dry time of the year in summer, and it was pretty scary. And so sort of around 10 o'clock, that's when we decided it was time to go. And it's weird when you have to put stuff in your car and you have to think, now what would be really inconvenient with me being without, sort of thing. So you kind of fit whatever you can in, and some electronic devices or whatever, and some clothes, and off you go. So that was interesting. And then one of our cars broke down in the nearest town, and so I had to come back after delivering the cats into Hobart, which took an hour there and an hour back, and then picked up my partner, and it was sort of one of those days, you know. And then we came back in the evening because it looked like it was calming down a little bit, although there was smoke everywhere. It was really thick with smoke. You couldn't see even the valley below us. You couldn't see the river, and it was pretty sort of ominous looking. And that's what it was kind of like all night. And it's still a bit like that. It's still like that today, really. You can see the valley, but you can't see across the river much. So yeah, so that's something that climate change brings us. That's the first time I've had to evacuate a house. And Tasmania is a fairly cool state, and the summers are not too bad. You might get the occasional fire, but mostly it's fairly good. There was a bad incident down in the southeast a couple of years ago, and a whole town was burnt down, but so that was bad. But this is sort of like all over the place, all over Tasmania. There's like 60 fires, and about 3/4 of them are uncontrolled, and you know, it's kind of a scary thing, fire. So anyway, that's climate change for you, and the danger isn't over yet, because we still have some hot days to come, and there's been no sign of rain, although it looks a little bit like that, but it keeps threatening rain every day, and then sort of it's just teasing, you know, teasing and going away, looking like it might rain a little bit and then going away. So who knows? But anyway, have good thoughts for us that it does rain, because that would make a significant difference to the fires that are still going on across the river. Friends of ours who are owners of the DS Cafe, they have a house in Geeveston, and they had to evacuate because Geeveston was in danger of going up in flames, and so they had to stay, and that was very stressful for them, and they had to take their dogs with them. And that's, you know, that's always a difficult thing when it's really hot. Anyway, so a lot of people are stressed here in Tasmania, in the southeast, in the south particularly, and it's going to be a bit tricky and a bit dangerous for the next probably couple of weeks at least. And I hope that the smoke goes away, because we can't even go for walks really. It's so smoky, and even inside the house you can smell it, even though we've got the house fairly well sealed. So that's not a whole lot of fun. And I can sit out here right now because this is the first time in a few days where once again it's actually cleared a little bit, and it doesn't all look kind of blue. So you know, that's nice. And we were able to sort of go out and not feel like it was, you know, not worry about should we leave the house alone and that kind of thing. But anyway, you know, this is the future of the planet, really, this climate crisis. And that's why I keep asking people to go vegan, because I don't think governments don't look like they're going in any direction that's the direction they should be going in relation to addressing climate change. And corporations certainly aren't, and capitalism just will eat up the planet till there's nothing left. You know, it's just a gigantic aim for ecocide. And animal agriculture is arguably the greatest driver, and I'm going to show you a couple of memes again, because I'm really wanting people who may not have tuned into this channel before to please consider going vegan, and there's a good reason why. I mean, the best reason to go vegan is because non-human animals are not our resources, and they're sentient. But there's equally another good reason. Well, it's not entirely equally, but this is their planet too. Non-human animals are 99.99% of the planet's population, so we're destroying their home. It's their home too. Just because they're another species doesn't mean they're irrelevant. And it doesn't mean they're not equally morally important to us, because we're just one species on the planet. And unfortunately, we are in overshoot and collapse, and we have, in the last 150, 200 years, with all our technological stuff and capitalism and all of that, and fossil fuels, and then animal agriculture in overdrive, we've managed to destroy the planet. We've managed to do what hasn't been able to be done in thousands of years. And we also now, we really are in a looming food crisis also because of animal agriculture. And I invite you to watch On Contact with Chris Hedges and look for the looming food crisis. It was released January 2019.
By 2050, the world's population is expected to reach nearly 9.8 billion. Most of this increase will occur in the global south. To feed a population of this size, we will have to produce more food in the next 40 years than was consumed in the last 10,000 years. If we continue to rely on the animal agriculture industry to feed us, the planetary food supply will soon suffer severe shortages, leading to massive hunger, malnutrition, starvation, and widespread unrest. Industrial animal agriculture already occupies more than half of the world's arable land and resources. It consumes most of our water. It expels more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire transportation sector. It is polluting and often poisoning the water, soil, and air, and deforesting the planet, as well as causing species extinction. The clash between overpopulation and a species reliant on the animal agriculture industry is a recipe for global catastrophe.
And of course, watch Cowspiracy, the Sustainability Secret. And there's also a documentary coming out by the same people called Seaspiracy. So check that out. So that's really all I wanted to say. Also, of course, and when I woke up about 3:30, I kept waking up during the night and looking out the curtains. I kept the curtains drawn so I could see to the river, and I noticed that there was more smoke coming over and obscuring the lights, a couple of lights that were across the river. And of course that's sort of a worry, and you know, you basically keep waking up in the middle of the night. You keep waking up in the middle of the night and wondering if you're going to wake up and find, you know, more of a disaster happening across the river, which means you have to get out. So I was looking for, you know, sort of glowing red lights, which didn't happen fortunately, but the smoke seemed to just be getting worse and worse. So obviously there's there's fires that are still burning over there, and but you know, it's a little bit of a reduced risk at the moment, but it could flare up at any time, particularly if the winds get worse, which can happen on an island, which is what Tasmania is. So anyway, have good thoughts for us, and it was also a worry, you know, that what's been going on with Venezuela, and how the US empire is trying to once again do a coup d'etat. It's not even a US-backed coup d'etat. They're right out in front in the open. They've been lining up everything and, you know, sort of funding opposition in Venezuela and all sorts of things, and even sort of helping organize, it seems from the evidence that they were helping, they were behind the assassination attempt of Nicolas Maduro a couple of months ago with that drone bomb that in that military procession he was presiding over. And this man, Nicolas Maduro, you know, it was a completely transparent election. He won by 6 million votes or something, and the opposition keeps boycotting these elections. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. And then this self-appointed Juan Guaido, he's decided he's not an elected person, but he's decided he's the president to be. I mean, it's just outrageous what's going on. Can you imagine that happening in your own country? I mean, and the US does not have transparent elections like Venezuela, so that's what makes it so, the irony of it all, you know, accusing the Maduro and accusing Venezuela of having these, you know, dodgy elections when the US has dodgy elections all the time. So I don't know, it's just appalling. It's hard to witness, you know, being Australian and watching this, it's hard to witness, and I feel very sad for Venezuelans having to constantly fight off the US empire trying to take over their country via the opposition, and turn it into a neoliberal privatized thing and take their oil, because that's what it's all about. Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia does. It's top of the list of countries with the most oil. It's at the top of the list. So this is all about oil and about hegemony and full spectrum dominance, and I really hope that Russia steps in if they try actual military invasion. I hope that Russia steps in and helps Venezuela, and I think they've committed to doing so. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. So, you know, have good thoughts for Venezuela, and share independent news. I'll leave some links to some independent journalists who have done some good journalism on this, and share that, because there's no context to a lot of the imperialist propaganda. Nancy Pelosi, as you would expect, is calling for regime change. There's a whole bunch of Democrats calling for regime change. The only Democrat that isn't calling for regime change is Tulsi Gabbard. She's actually saying the opposite. Bernie Sanders put out imperialist propaganda, although then he sort of speaks out of both sides of his mouth and says, but we shouldn't be in the business of regime change. But he just put out in his first tweet of 3 that, you know, all this imperialist propaganda about Venezuela and about Maduro and about the elections in Venezuela. It's appalling. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez hasn't said anything at all, which is suspect. I find when people are silent, when something so major is happening, that says a lot about them. And the other person who's silent is Kamala Harris, but we know that she's an imperialist in a big way, and when she gets in, it'll be just like Obama if she gets in, because she obviously is the pick, and that means that none of these other people will get a look in. Not that I think any of them are particularly good. Even Tulsi Gabbard, she's got lots of problems, but nobody who is anti-imperialist will ever get a look in those US presidential elections. So anyway, so take a look at the Democrats and see who isn't saying anything about regime change in Venezuela. Look for the ones that are promoting regime change in Venezuela, and then look for the ones that are not saying anything. And that you'll probably know, at best, they're probably ambivalent about it, but they probably are okay with it. If somebody's not okay with that in the Democratic Party, they're probably never going to see, if they have any presidential aims, it's not going to happen. You have to be an imperialist. You have to be pro-war to get anywhere near that office in the US empire. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say. So have good thoughts for us in the next couple of weeks. I hope to come on tomorrow and talk about some stuff, but I've been so preoccupied with the possibility of our house burning down and also just being ready to go. It's a very anxiety-provoking thing when you're always having to be looking out and watching how the smoke is and if there's any fires, and watching the Tasmanian Fire Service alerts and all that kind of thing. And I was saying to my partner today that, this is something that people in the Middle East have to deal with all the time, the ones that have had their countries invaded by US empire and Western allies, constantly having to be worried about drones bombing their houses or something like that. This is something they have to go through all the time, what I've been going through the last few days. That's something to keep in mind. The level of anxiety and stress that they must feel, it must be just, and the post-traumatic stress of having all that happen to you, bombings and your families being murdered and all of that. So it's always good to, have some fear of your own life put into you, or rather, or your existence put into you, because it helps remind you how fragile life is, and some people just don't have any houses to be worried about. They have nowhere to live. So anyway, so I consider myself a very fortunate person. I have first world people's problems in a way, because most people in the world don't have any house to live in, and they don't have health care, and they don't have a whole bunch of things. And that shouldn't be like that. We should all have security, safety, love, and we should have peace. We should all have that. And for the sake of the planet and for the sake of non-human animals, who are 99% of the planet's population and who are sentient, we should all be vegan, because they deserve that. That's the least we can do. As somebody said once, whom I knew, it's the minimum standard of decency. So let's go vegan for the planet, but most importantly, because animals are not our resources. So thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel or hit the like button if you like the content. Please click the notifications bell if you want to get updates, because otherwise you won't. And please leave comments. I enjoy reading people's comments, and if they're civil. And when people leave comments, I know that there is some sort of viewership, that people are engaging in the content, and I don't mind if it's criticism as long as it's civil. Okay, so thanks, and as long as it's researched. When people make comments about veganism and they don't know anything about it, that always is a little bit irritating for me. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. Till next time, bye for now.